Once a month, we check in with some of our local legislators. Today, it's Representative Dave Maturen's turn, and so he's back with us this morning. Hi, Dave.
Morning. Pleasure to be here.
Well, thanks for being back with us today as well. You can join us if you wish. You have a question for Representative Maturen. 441-9595 is the number, and you're welcome to be a part of the program today. So back with business at hand. Committee assignments were awarded, and now you know on which committees you'll be serving.
I do, yes. I'm Vice Chair of Tax Policy again. I'm also on Transportation and Infrastructure. I think it's a lot of heavy lifting to do there. Got appointed to two new committees. One is Natural Resources, but the other is an interesting committee. It's called Financial Liability Reform.
Oh, my.
I do believe that's a committee that's going to be taking up the whole OPEB, other post-employment benefits and pension issues that we started last year in the local government committee and just didn't get off the ground except for one bill dealing with a little bit of transparency. So it's a huge issue, not only for local governments, but it's also a big issue for the state of Michigan. We have a lot of liabilities ourselves. So, how do we work our way out of the fix that we've gotten ourselves into over the past couple decades for making promises and then just not funding those promises or making unrealistic assumptions. So I'm looking forward to working in that committee and having some good discussions about it, bringing in lots of experts and doing some smart reform.
This is the committee that will work on that which was alluded in, as you said, the latter part of the last session, and the whole pension issue came up, and that stirs people up quickly. Yeah. But this is a problem that will have to be addressed somehow.
Well, there are unfunded liabilities, and you either take care of it now, or the folks that were anticipating a pension may not get one. Most likely they will. It could be reduced. Health care could not be there at all, even though it may have been promised to them if it's not guaranteed in a contract. So a lot of different issues, a lot of folks anticipating it, yet it's not fair to the taxpayers. And it's certainly not fair to future generations to say, here's your bill, and they're going to say, well, what do we get for it? Well, we already spent it, but you get to pay it. So I think it's a major, it's called intergenerational wealth transfer, and we got to make sure our kids and grandkids don't inherit what we have created over the last couple of decades.
Mm-hmm. Transportation and infrastructure, not a lot of work to be done there, is there?
Probably not, no. No, we just had a report come out that shows that essentially we're $4 billion short in funding all of our transportation and infrastructure, and it's not just the stuff you can see on the roads, but it's all the stuff underground. If it's water lines, if it's sinkholes, or whatever it might be, there's a lot of stuff that we've ignored over the years. Again, finding other things to spend money on rather than setting aside money to fix those things, knowing that eventually they're going to need repairs, and kind of been ignoring that too. So lots of issues out there that folks have kind of said that let's just let somebody else worry about it. Well, we got to worry about it.
Yeah. So this is an interesting point that you're making. The sinkhole, for example, in Macomb County, and I think there was one in Kalamazoo recently. You're saying we've been ignoring these things. We know they're coming.
We should know they're coming. Yeah. I mean, it's all about asset management. If you got an asset, you've got to realize that you need to put something aside. It's many times called a sinking fund to, no pun intended, with the Holden Fraser, but a sinking fund to realize that you've got to at some point in time spend money fixing these things. Some communities have done a very good job, built it into their rates, take advantage of road projects to put in new sewer lines, and other communities haven't. And what I don't want to do is paint everybody in the state of Michigan with one broad brush, because some folks have really done it good or done it well, and other folks haven't. And so it's a matter of trying to get to those communities that have ignored this, and or the state of Michigan with its liabilities, and saying, what can we do to fix this stuff? I mean, it's an issue that not only affects future generations, but it's an economic development issue. I mean, our infrastructure is key to folks wanting to come to Michigan to locate businesses. I mean, if your trucks are going to get beat up, why come here?
Yeah. We're here with Representative Dave Maturen. Brady Township, part of his district is in Calhoun County. You're welcome to join us if you have a question or comment at 441-9595. We'll come back in a minute and talk about Tax Policy Committee and some other things on the agenda. That's on the way on 95.3 WBCK. We're here with Representative Dave Maturen for a few more minutes on WBCK. So what's happening with Tax Policy Committee? There's been some movement there, right?
Yeah, there's a bill that was dropped. It's the first bill. All of these House bills start with the number 4,000. So 4,001 was rolling back the state income tax from 4.25% to 3.9%. Mm-hmm. And every 0.1% reduction in the state income tax is roughly $250 million. So that would be $850 million to begin with, and actually $1.2 million for the following fiscal year. Billion, 1.2 billion.
Wow.
For the following fiscal year. And some folks think that's a good idea, that there was a promise made back when the income tax was 3.9, and apparently Granholm raised it to 4.35. It got ratcheted down, and then several years ago, before I was in the legislature, Governor Snyder, I think, said, whoop, we're going to put a halt to this. It's just the funds aren't there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when you're reducing income tax rates, you're reducing the amount of money you're taking in. Any concerns with that?
I do have some concerns. One of the concerns I have is we aren't told where the reduction is going to come from, because we've got a general fund that in 2001 was $10 billion. Mm-hmm. In 2017 was $10 billion. So our general fund that we use to operate state government hasn't gone up at all. In fact, inflation adjusted, it's down to between $6 and $7 billion. Uh-huh. So we lost about 35% of the purchasing power. Yet the amount of money in there hasn't changed, and the legislature has pretty much saddled that fund with an additional $1 billion plus minus that was never even in existence 4 years ago. $600 million for roads, $200 million for homestead property tax credit, excuse me, and then personal property tax reform, which was a really great idea to help industry out and small business people. Yep. That adds another. Well, last year was $340 million, so we're over $1 billion added as a liability to the general fund that wasn't even in existence 4 years ago, and yet we're going to take another $1.1 billion out of it. I'm trying to do the math.
Yeah.
And to me, at this point, I haven't seen where the reductions are going to come from and what impacts it's going to have. I mean, that's just good, sound budgeting policy, and I'd like to see the two, if we are going to do that, go hand in glove.
Mm-hmm. State Representative Dave Maturen is here. We'll talk more about that in a minute. You're welcome to join if you have a question. 441-9595 is the number. Yeah, it's interesting. You make the point about how we're $4 billion behind, is it, in trying to get road repairs done, and now we're talking about reducing the income tax, which is fine. But it is an interesting picture. We're talking about not having enough money for something, but reducing the amount of revenue we're taking in, which could put us in a little bit of a spot, which is why you're saying we should see what's going to be cut.
Yeah, I think that's just prudent budgeting. I mean, in 26 years in local government, we never went ahead and decided to cut our millage rate without saying, okay, what else, what the other shoe is going to drop, fall, and what's going to take the hit. So. And all of this is, in the face of not only the infrastructure needs, but we still have over $20 billion in teacher retirement. That's unfunded liabilities. We have somewhere in the range of $10 billion in state employee retiree health care. That's unfunded liabilities. I kind of think you should pay your debts off before you decide to take that cruise. To me, it's prudent budgeting. And we've got a lot of issues out there that need to be addressed from a long-term sustainability standpoint. Mm-hmm. And, one of the estimates was the average working guy, a hard-working taxpayer making $50,000 a year is going to get about a $150 a year tax break. That's $3 a week. I'm not sure if that $3 a week is going to spur him on to buying a new car. Yeah. How much economic activity are you going to see for another $3 a week? Yeah. Yet $850 million collectively is a big hit.
Right. And if folks out there are in a position where they could use some tax relief, that might not necessarily mean they're going to go out and buy that car. It might give them a little breathing room to just take a breath for a second.
Could be. Yeah. Could pay off some debts or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to the phone now and say hello to Mike, who's calling from Albion today with a question about revenue sharing. Hello, Mike.
Yes, I'm from the village of Athens.
Okay, Athens, great. Mm-hmm.
From Athens. And want to ask Representative Maturen about, I see in Governor Snyder's budget proposal, there's an increase in part of the revenue sharing for villages and cities. But I just always like to see, why can't we get back to where we were to full revenue sharing several years ago? And I'd like to see that made possibly a priority.
All right, we can talk about that.
Well, that was probably another promise that was made to folks, is that we were going to fully fund revenue sharing, and it hasn't happened. So that's just one more promise,
Another
one more
thing.
liability we have out there. That I'm not on appropriations, so I mean I've got a chance to talk to people, but I don't have a chance, initially to vote on the bills coming out of appropriations. But we certainly have a lot of communities have taken a hit. There's constitutional revenue sharing, but there's also statutory revenue sharing, and of course the constitutional is still based upon revenues that are coming in. And when state government gets behind, they like to protect their own turf, and somebody else is going to get cut. So, always trying to work on bringing that back up to the level of where it was before. But I know a lot of the local communities have been shorted substantially, and some folks say that's one of the reasons that we have a pension post-employment benefit issue, is that they haven't had the money to fund those things. So certainly an important issue. We want to keep that in the forefront, and I know the folks from the municipal groups are always reminding us that, hey, you made a promise to us too. So.
As far as we realize you're not on appropriations, and thank you, Mike, for the call. Is the overall notion that something needs to be done about that? Is it a priority, would you say, just generally speaking, in the topics that get discussed broadly?
Well, it's one of the many, many priorities that we have to face, and we have limited resources, limited resources to fund local governments, limited resources for roads, limited resources for lots of programs we have out there. It's a balancing act. It's a matter of priorities that we have to address every year, and again in a finite budget. The budget's gone up, and people say, well, how come the budget's gone up billions of dollars? Those are federal dollars for the most part. I gave you the example of the general fund being stagnant for 16 years.
Right.
The money comes in. Our hands are tied. It's generally money for social services. The federal government uses the state government as a pass-through. We generally give the money to the counties as a pass-through. So the growth in the budget hasn't come at the expense of the local taxpayers. It's federal money, of course, and they also have a huge liability problem out there. So.
Yeah. So last week, the House Republican Action Plan was released. What's that all about, Dave?
Well, it's a set of kind of some general concepts. The previous plan had some very specific issues. Do this, eliminate that, more money for this, that kind of stuff. And this is kind of some generally split up into 5 general concept areas. Last time we kind of gave ourselves a rating, and we did 72% of the 100% of what we had attempted to do. One of the things I find good about the plan is the fact that we're going to be stressing more job training, more career technical education. I mean, we have thousands of jobs that are just sitting there going unfilled because people don't have the skills, and not necessarily 4-year degree skills either. There's a lot of good things going on with community colleges and other entities out there that are training people to fill those jobs, and they're pretty good paying jobs, and it's certainly a good step forward to a career.
So here in Calhoun County, the RMTC is working in that endeavor, and KBCC is doing the same thing in Kalamazoo County, trying to provide more educational opportunities for those skilled trades areas and others. Is that going to be enough, you think?
It's going to be competing with everything else that's out there.
Yeah,
I know some of the community colleges didn't get an increase in their state revenues this year. I think there were 4 of them. Had to do more with the personal, and again, there's nothing simple in Lansing.
Yeah.
Had to do more with the personal property tax reimbursement. Actually, the local communities had more money reimbursed to them than what they actually lost. It was just an estimate. And so I think the feeling was, look at if we gave you 2.5%, that would probably be less than what we're going to let you keep from the PPT replacement. So they've got to take a look at that. And those community colleges apparently didn't have a lot of industrial property, so they didn't see a PPT loss, personal property tax loss. And so there wasn't a reimbursement. But it's like, hey, don't forget about us. So the typical put together a statute, and there's always some cracks in it people fall through.
Lots of demand on the resources we have, I guess, is the bottom line.
It certainly is, yeah.
All right. Well, we appreciate the updates. And folks, if they have questions, can certainly call your office and get those addressed, right?
Yeah, we've got a toll-free number, in fact, 844. My last name, Maturen, Maturen. So if you, a lot of folks call in. We try to assist folks with navigating through the bureaucratic process if they have questions. So have a very good staff, and look forward to serving the people.
844 Maturen. That's easy to remember. Yep. All right. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Talk again next month. State Representative Dave Maturen on WBCK.